Okay, this video is just going to be a super quick overview of Purgatorio and Paradiso because I just do not have time to make those videos. The way that Dante writes Purgatory is that is the only layer of the afterlife that you can escape from. You arrive in Purgatory after your death, and you will serve a sentence before moving on into heaven. The way this sentence is calculated is by multiplying the amount of time you spent engaging in a sin by 30, and no, nobody knows why Dante chose 30. For example, one of the sins that can land you in Purgatory is excommunication from the church. Let's say you died at 60 and you were excommunicated at 30, meaning you spent 30 years in excommunication. That would be 30 years times 30, meaning you will spend 900 years in purgatory for the sin of excommunication. Now, there are other sins, including the 7 deadly sins that will land you in purgatory. Some of them feel like they are identical to some of the ones in hell, like gluttony, wrath, and lust, except they are different in purgatory because of the way they were committed. Sins that will land you in hell are ones that you actively chose to do and that were malicious. Ones that will land you in purgatory are basically just you being lazy. So Dante and Virgil walk through purgatory and see a bunch of other really bizarre punishments that sinners have to suffer, and I'm gonna display a couple paintings right now because they're just cool to look at. Alright, I think that was an ample amount of time. Upon reaching the top of purgatory, sinners are made to step through a gate of flame so that they may be cleansed of sin and enter into the earthly paradise, which is the Garden of Eden. Dante also has to step through this gate, and because it is made of flames, it is excruciatingly painful. So Virgil goes with him, despite him not even having to. He just did it because he wants to be nice to Dante, which is actually a really sweet moment. Dante walks into the Garden of Eden, and a bunch of really bizarre things happen with some symbolism. There's this beast that comes out of the woods with a harlot, and there's this chariot and an eagle and candelabras dancing and a bunch of angels, and he passes out again. He wakes up after being bathed in the river Lethe and is allowed to enter into heaven, where he can finally meet Beatrice again. The way that heaven was thought of at the time was it was just outer space, with the first layer being the moon, the second the sun, the third Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the fixed stars, and beyond that is the Empyrean, where God himself resides. Dante and Beatrice walk through all of these layers, and the further or deeper you get into heaven, the more unbridled divinity you are able to be exposed to. A side effect of this is that every time they enter a new layer of heaven, Beatrice appears to be more beautiful than she last was. So they walk through heaven, there's a bunch of symbolism and visions, and they eventually meet God, who's like, "Yo, Dante, you did it." And here are a couple more paintings from Paradiso, because these are also really cool. Alright, I think that's enough. So anyway, that is essentially everything. I could spend more time covering it and going over a lot more of the symbolism, which I had to skip out on a lot of, because even just in Inferno, there is a ton of symbolism that I could have gone over every single detail. Every single character in the story is a symbolic representation of something, and every single punishment has a deep-rooted symbolic meaning, but I am not going to go over all of that. I'm going to end this part by reading the last lines of Paradiso. So, without further ado. "Just so was I on seeing this new vision. I wanted to see how our image fuses into the circles and finds its place in it. Yet my wings were not meant for such a flight. Except then that my mind was struck by lightning, through which my longing was at last fulfilled. Here powers failed my high imagination, but by now my desire and will were turned, like a balanced wheel rotated evenly, by the love that moves the sun and the stars."